Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to eLearnChat. I'm Rick Zanotti, and I'm joined today by, you know him well, Ajay Pangakar, coming to us from, is it Winnipeg, right?
No,
Winnipeg?
Winnipeg. Ottawa,
Ne-
Canada, my friend.
You're what?
Ottawa, Canada.
Ottawa. Why did I say Winnipeg? I don't know
I have
why.
no idea because I would never visit Winnipeg a day in my life.
Oh,
But
it's that
anyway,
bad, huh? Okay. Ottawa. I'm so sorry. Canada, for all those who may not know. Anyway, we should have a fun show today. And we've got Anthony Altieri as our guest today. He's been on before also. And we're going to run our intro first. For some odd reason, the intro's not running. Yeah, that's weird. This show is sponsored by Relate Corporation. Visit us at www.relatecasts.net. Thanks. And we are back. Ajay, how have you been?
I've been doing well. It's getting quite chilly and the holidays are coming up. So I'm looking forward to some of the downtime.
Well,
But actually, I'm looking forward to today's conversation with Anthony because
yeah,
we
and
always have a lot of fun with
since
him.
since last we spoke, or at least we've been on a show together, we moved up to Boise, Idaho, and we've had snow since Thanksgiving, on and off. So we're snowy right now. Very nice in winter wonderland out there. Haven't
A
lived
little
in
different from
snow.
a little different from that California life, right, Rick?
Yeah, but I grew up in New York, so I guess that brings back memories now.
Yeah.
Had to get a new jacket that was a little warmer. Um, but anyway, let's introduce Anthony. Anthony,
Howdy.
how are you doing today?
I am well, sir. How are you?
Good. For those who don't know, can you give us a very short synopsis of who, what, and when you were?
I'm never short when I introduce myself because there's just so much awesomeness to discuss. My name is Anthony Altieri. I am the idiot, the instructional developer for the Internet of Things.
Ah,
Kind of my forte is looking at training needs and how do we get there using not only the normally learning courses, but also looking at real world items that we can use, machinery, etc., connecting that to the network and gleaning usable metrics there to judge whether or not our training is actually making a difference.
interesting. Most people don't do that. So,
I am
but
certainly not most people.
no, you're not.
I
Now,
can vouch for that.
yeah. Now, Ajay, you were talking about e-learning accountability yesterday. I would say
Yeah.
what Anthony's working on has something to do with e-learning accountability.
Well, the three of us have always had this kind of conversation in the past, either offline, and Anthony and I, we always, you know, sort of sit back as armchair quarterbacks at times on social media, watching the interactions with individuals in our space and the learning space, and realizing that there's a lot of talk but little action when it comes to accountability. And I know Anthony has some very strong opinions on that. We both do, I should say. I don't want to hang him out to dry here, although I do enjoy doing that at times. But
Yes, you do.
Anthony and I both have very strong opinions on learning accountability, and like you said, there's got to be some tangibility to the work that we do that shows some proven outcomes past the dollars and cents of it, and that's where I sort of step in.
Well, yeah, I call it dollars and nonsense because half the time it's amazing what they spend money on and what they don't spend money on, and they make no common sense.
Yeah.
What's
And
interesting, and Anthony may support this, and you might want to kick in here, Anthony. But you know, I know from discussions with various operational leaders within organizations that they need learning more than ever before. And if there's a disconnect. I recently wrote an article on the communication chasm between operations and learning and development.
Hmm.
And it's interesting the disconnect between the two because these operational leaders see it as a priority to their competitiveness.
yeah, absolutely. Um, I think one of the things people I can speak for the American side of the fence. I will not I will not equally disparage Canada as much as I would the U.S. in this case. But we're seeing massive shifts over the last couple of years in employment. A lot of people are going remote that were not remote before, and what you see there is there was a lot more opportunity for just-in-time training. Hey, hey, buddy, come here. How do I do this? How do I do? What button do I push? Well, that's not available anymore. You don't have that person in the cubicle next to you. So especially now, having that training is far more important because it's so much more important for your employees to. I don't want to say to know what they're doing because I don't want to say your employees are dumb. But there's a lot of context that goes into pushing that button. It's not just push that button. It's when to push that button, how to push that button, under what circumstances, etc. And so that training is far more important now than it has been before because we've lost so much of that just natural support that we have with people who would normally be sitting at the desk next to me. So yeah, training is vital today. And also from an operational standpoint, the better trained my staff is, the more efficient they are at doing their job. I don't want to say the more job they can do, but frankly, the less cost the less cost I incur per widget for that person if they're doing it efficiently. So again, to Ajay's point, training is vitally important. Absolutely.
Now, I've got a question for you on that, Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the average corporate American, and probably Canadian too, and probably anywhere else in the world, but we tend to have a lot of lawyers and regulators and this and that. But if you look at the average life of an employee, or especially a manager in any of those companies, they have to take anywhere between 20 and 50 courses a year. A lot of compliance courses, a lot of this, that. A lot of time and money is wasted on training that. I don't know, does it really benefit the company? No, in most cases, no. A lot of it tends to be just checkoffs. I did this, I did that, I did this. And they're protecting themselves. But that's where a lot of e-learning money is going. Nothing really all that useful sometimes. Well, what do you think of that?
Well,
And look at all the layoffs that are going on. They have to hire people back in later, which they will, and then they got to be retrained all over again, and the torture begins.
So this is where I'm going to get all kinds of love. The reality is, and I'd be very curious to hear Ajay's take on this. So I'm looking at the last couple courses I had to take for my job as a manager. I would say the courses that I'm taking are absolutely checkbox courses. I would say they're more marketing and PR. Hey, look at us. Our staff is highly trained on diversity and inclusion. Things like that. And I'm not saying that isn't important, but the reality is, in a lot of organizations, there are so many layers to hiring that the thought that training me in this is going to make an overarching difference is frankly statistically laughable. Because between there's my manager, there's the HR manager, there's the recruiter, all of these people have to work together. But it sure makes neat print to say, hey, look at all our people are certified in, XYZ. And I seriously would suggest a lot of those. I don't want to say they're PR, but I mean, effectively, who's benefiting? It's the marketing team.
Yeah, I agree, to a great extent, I do agree with Anthony. There's a lot of window dressing when it comes to the perception of how a company is treating their employees and the whole development aspect. There's a couple of things I want to address is the compliance one, and it may be a little more on the U.S. side, but I think it's still globally, universally accepted that with compliance, it's a check off and they just want to protect themselves. And naturally, they're going to deploy anything to avoid the lawsuits. So unfortunately, that's the reality of compliance. And that's probably not the way we should be treating it, but that's the way it's being treated. As for the window dressing and all that, and Anthony is right. One person having the certifications or any type of skill set is not going to make a huge difference in the global context of the organization. But when taken collectively, there is an impact within the organization. When you see, what I always sort of highlight the leading organizations in the world, right? They're not perfect by no means. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to be a cheerleader for any of them, but many of them have been able to connect. They've fully integrated learning into their culture, right? And that's the key here. It's a fully embraced attitude of the organization that learning becomes part of that context. So if you look at an organization like Toyota or even Starbucks, not perfect companies by no means, but at the end of the day, if you have to train that one barista at one store to be accurate on all the drinks plus the customized drinks, that drink also has to be replicated around the world at all the Starbucks around the world. And each of those baristas have to be consistent as well. So operationally, if that consistency doesn't take place to a 98% accuracy, and I've done this experiment, right? And you can do this experiment too at home. Go to your Starbucks in the corner. Next time you travel anywhere in the US or Canada or in the world, go to that Starbucks and order the exact same drink. And I challenge you to find a difference in what you've ordered. At the end of the day, there's a consistency. And you can apply that to Starbucks, you can apply that to McDonald's, whatever you want to do. But that is the global context of not just having one person, as he says, that won't make a difference, but collectively, that consistency across the board is how these organizations embrace learning within the organization. And safe to say, I'll conclude on this point, the learning development teams within that are not an afterthought. They're a fully integrated thought within the organization. And so that really is the difference between the two. So when you talk about learning accountability, it stands the test of time in those organizations.
And I'll actually double down on Ajay's point. Maybe now with millennials coming up, it's going to move to Starbucks. But those of us of a certain age, we remember, because it's still true, one of the key, and Ajay's going to laugh at me for this, but one of the key financial indicators is the price of a Big Mac. When you look at cost of living comparisons, the Big Mac is something that is used constantly.
No, wait. Are we talking about Big Mac with real meat or the fake crap?
My lawyers have advised me not to comment on that. But to Ajay's point, that only works as the financial indicator that it is if what you get in Nebraska, in Wisconsin, in London is the same Big Mac with the same lettuce, the same mayo, the same 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, blah, 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 blah. Yes, I'm old enough that I can sing that entire song if I had to. But that training, they have to be made the same way for that to have value. And that comes down to that training. So to Ajay's point, absolutely, the training around constructing that Big Mac is a vital part of McDonald's success. That's absolutely not an afterthought.
But can I go back to the McDonald's example? And Anthony's right. So going back to that example is 100%. But here's at McDonald's is a great example to show where some of the wheels, even though the share price is increasing, recently they made a change in their operations. And the learning may be consistent, but it shows how the operational wheels are falling off a little bit. If you ever been to a McDonald's lately, again, dating myself and dating Anthony and dating you, Rick, we used to go to McDonald's and it'd be like 10 cashiers and each one fulfilling an order. And it seemed very quick when we got to the front of the line and order a thing. Today you go, there's all these, and maybe Anthony could kick in on this, but all these, smart boards. Where you have to order and then take a number, pay it, and then you're waiting like on an end of a line for your number to appear on the screen, and it bottlenecks. And it's like each time I go to McDonald's, which is not very often, but each time I go to McDonald's and just order a coffee, let's say, the bottleneck that wouldn't have taken place 30 years ago, and technology has kicked in, and now there's a bottleneck in a new operational process. I would dare to say it's probably not the fault of training and development here. It's more this is the operational fault on how they've created a flow. Really, where I'm going with this is that if you're going to be in learning development, you have to understand how operation works. And you have to contribute where you can contribute, but you also should not be able to take the fault if something else falls off the wheels. If something happens in the organization that changes the dynamics, like in this case, in my opinion, McDonald's, then there's other issues within the organization, and which can happen. But at the end of the day, the training has got to be consistent throughout the board. It's got to show that value that Anthony's talking about. But then you can step back and say, well, in this case, it's not our fault. We did train up the skills. Employees still are doing the work properly. They're still doing the, 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese. I can do the song too, Anthony. 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese on a sesame seed bun. But at
Pickles,
the end of the
onions on a sesame seed bun.
Onions, thank you. Thank you for correcting me publicly.
But that brings up an interesting point, because McDonald's has had other issues. And one of them is the government intervention of what? Think of one thing the government's really bugging McDonald's on. Wages. And McDonald's said, we can't afford to pay $25 an hour for somebody to flip a burger or do whatever else. So they're, I think, experimenting a lot with new processes, trying to figure out how do we automate the whole operation.
Okay, I'm going to put a bug in that one, because I've been doing a bit of research in that area with the raise of wages, and I really do not like the propaganda, because I think it's a false flag. It's a red herring.
But that's what they're complaining about.
Yeah, and I think a lot of corporates are complaining about it, but it's, excuse my language here, I don't know if we can swear on the podcast, but it's bullcrap. I'll say bullcrap, not the other word.
Okay.
But here's the deal, and I'll give you a historical example that qualifies exactly for this. So back in, 1920, 1925, I don't know what, somewhere around the beginning of the 20th century, when Henry Ford decided that when you're getting paid like 50 cents a day or whatever it was, $1 a day to work a day shift on the factory line, and he was desperate for his growth, and he said he would pay like almost 500 times the wages that were currently in the marketplace to $5 a day. That still kept the products lower, because the economics of it makes sense, because if he pays a better wage, he creates a better middle class, which then can afford an affordable car, and he'll sell more of them. So the whole wage argument for me is a lot of bullcrap, because in that simple example, it proved that back in the day, he increased wages at something close to 300 to 500%. And the rest of the employers had to compete to maintain their employees, because they're all flocking to Ford at the time. That showed that you can still keep a cost of goods down without increasing the cost of goods, and develop a very strong buyer market that will be more equipped to pay for the product. So the whole wage increase thing is to me is a red flag.
Now, what about, you were talking about ops earlier, and one of the problems with ops and learning, it's very hard to find learning professionals who understand ops in a specific industry, unless they get moved in there and say, you're now in e-learning or training.
So let me stop you right there, because I need to make a grammatical or a syntactic correction of, I don't know anybody who's a professional learner. And I don't know anybody who's a learning professional. I know people who are training
practitioners.
I'm even a little hesitant to use the word professional there. But I think that is one thing that and again, Ajay knows my love of the use of the word industry in describing what we do. But I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things is, and it is important. It's not just me being pedantic. It actually is important. You have to look at, am I focusing on the training, which is the delivery of the content, or the learning, which is the absorption of the content? Those are two very, very different things.
Mm-hmm.
And just because you're an expert in one side does not in any way, shape, or form make you an expert in the other. And so I do think that is an exceptionally vital difference to make.
So in that respect, who do you make more accountable? Is it bad training development? Is it bad operation management? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it indifferent? Where are things falling apart a bit or a lot?
So I will I will default to another set of two Steves. Stephen is it Dubner and Stephen Levitt, who wrote the book Freakonomics.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the key things they focus on is motivation. What motivates you to do something? If you are properly motivated, you will learn. End of story. You know, if I want to learn something, I'm going to learn, either despite the bad training, you know, terrible videos, the acting's horrible, the grammar's terrible, you refuse to use an Oxford comma, whatever. You know, I'm going to learn anyway. So really, it's what's going on in the culture of that organization to motivate me to learn. So if we stick to, let's continue to pick on McDonald's, because no one ever talks about McDonald's. So we'll just continue to pick on them. If I'm an employee at a McDonald's, at a franchise, what's my motivation to learn? What's my motivation to improve? Now, that motivation could be the promise of a raise, the promise of increased revenue personally, more hours, which would also increase my revenue, promotion, what have you. And I think that also ties back to the, in America, it's the OSHA compliance checkbox courses. I'm not motivated to learn, so I'm just clicking next and hitting, you know, whatever to get through it and get it done with, but I'm not learning anything. And that could be some of the best training ever developed. But if I'm not motivated to pay attention, I'm not going to learn. And that comes down to organizational culture.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to your question to Rick about operations, and I agree with Anthony on a lot of this. You know, by the way, Anthony, you know, I use the term practitioners a lot. I never use the term professional.
Yes.
Because
yes,
I am a
that's
professional.
The word I was.
Yeah.
That was
I'm
the
a
word I was
professional.
looking for. I couldn't think of it.
Yeah, I'm a professional legally, so holding a CPA designation designates me a professional. To include somebody who's not consistently driven to bound by certain standards, that's another issue altogether. But I'm going down a rabbit hole here. But the point being, Rick, about you asking about operations and learning. There are programs, and I'm going to stoke the fire a little bit because I know Anthony has a strong opinion on this, and we won't name names, but Anthony, but there are programs out there in universities that do this educational certification technology stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And
oh boy.
Yeah, we'll get to you in a second. But yeah, Ricky's got strong opinions on this, which I don't disagree with. But anyways, I see an advantage of people who go from operations into learning and development. And I see a lot of that because a lot of us in our generation who haven't been through those programs, I always say that people fall backwards into learning and development. So there's a value to bring into it that if I'm coming from an operations standpoint into learning and development, I'm bringing a significant understanding of how the organization works, or at least the department I was part of, and the interactions. So when I'm building that learning aspect, that works. Now, there's probably a lot of new generations coming in from these educational programs, which, from my point of view, and I'm going to stop after this point and let Anthony kick in here, but from my point of view, they don't even include a lot of operational business acumen within it. They just focus on the instructional design side and the course development. And it's like, well, you're missing half the story because not all of us, or many of us, are not going to be working in academia. We're going to be working in the real world. And we have to understand, we have to have a business literacy, not expertise, a literacy. And they don't include that.
I totally agree.
No, and I think Ajay nailed it right on the head. You have to have literacy. You know, if you're going to do, you know, I always tell people, whatever you do, wherever you're employed, doesn't matter. You have to have a certain amount of financial literacy about how that company operates. How much do you cost? Is one of the first things I always say. That's one of the first things an employee should think about is how much do I cost to be here? That does not, I'm not saying you have to be a CPA. I'm saying you have to be able to sit down and say, okay, well, I get paid X amount an hour. Then you've got the company side of the taxes, benefits. My employer or my manager, he's got to get paid to tell me what to do, or she, so you have to have some kind of an idea how much you cost. That's not expertise. That's literacy. similarly, getting back to those
Educational
programs,
educational programs.
educational those educational programs. I've only seen 3. I understand there are a couple more that have popped up over the last couple of years. The 3 that I've seen, frankly, if I get a resume from somebody who went through those programs, I won't even interview them. I won't even wait. I won't even spend the time. Because to Ajay's point, it's not even course development. There's some instructional design. It's way too much gamification. Gamification.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Depends if you're a Hulk fan or not, I guess. There's not very, very little business, and again, you don't need an MBA, but just have a basic understanding of how businesses operate if you want to support the training within a very real world application. Again, to Ajay's point, this is not academia. This is people's livelihoods. It's not covered there.
That's a really good point. And I remember when we used to be a programming shop where we did a lot of programming for major business applications and packages. The first thing we would do when we hired people, right? A lot of them were right out of school, some of them. We gave them an internal course in basic business. They didn't even know what accounts payable was, what's accounts receivable, what's a general ledger, what's a job line, what's a job order, what's this. And they would sit there going, they had no idea. So they learned programming, but they had no idea what to do with it except, well, I can make things on a screen get on and off really quickly. Well, that's nice, but that's not going to get you a lot. And so, and we've done that with instructional designers we've hired in the past. We have to train them in basic operational management, depending on the kind of things we're doing. And again, the eyes open wide, there's fear, and what do we do?
But that, Rick, that's what the reason MBA programs were created 50 years ago was to, take engineers. Initially, it was engineering, to take engineers to be able to understand business, so they'd be promoted to operate on a management level, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't understand the hesitance or even the reticence or even the animosity at times for some learning practitioners who say, I don't need to learn business. I was hired for my learning expertise. Yeah, no kidding. That's what you were hired for.
Right.
But you're working within a business. You are a business unit, as Anthony says, costing no corporation money that's supposed to add value in some way. You're a business unit within a business to deliver business results. What's your problem?
But I think that goes back to the point that a lot of people that graduate from college and get into the quote-unquote learning industry want to be academics at heart, not business people. They don't like business people many times. So you have that kind of, why would you go into business?
For university, for God's sakes. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm being very blunt about this. And at the end of the day, listen, if you want to be an academic, go for it. I mean, I have no problem with it. I mean, but don't be an academic within a work environment or a business operational environment.
Yeah. I mean, again, and I'm in agreement. We are agreeing with each other way too much. This is going to be the most boring episode ever. Sorry, Rick. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with academia. There's definitely a place for academia. It's not, at the fry station of a McDonald's. It's, at the fry station of a McDonald's, we don't want to hear your philosophical tirade about, Machiavellian management practices. We want to know, how to fix that fry machine to get it working again, so this guy over here can get his fries. You have to have that real world understanding, and the reality is the real world is very interconnected, and there's a lot of context in everything, and you have to have some basic business acumen. You also have to have some contextual business acumen to, you're going to need to know different things about working in a McDonald's than you do in a Kohl's department store versus, an auto shop, a Ford assembly line. But there's still, things about that business you need to understand. And especially the training practitioners, this hesitance to pick up a phone. I think that's the one that gets me the most is, okay, I need to build this course. Pick up the phone and talk to the different stakeholders and say, okay, what do you need from this employee? How do you need this employee to be, I'm going to say better for lack of a better term, but more efficient, what have you, better trained? How can that help you? And that hesitance to work within the other business organization, within the other organizations within that business is just astounding to me.
You know what's funny,
And
Anthony? You bring up a great point, because I always say this to learning practitioners when I'm at conferences, and you've heard me say this, Anthony. If you go to buy something, I don't know, from Target or Walmart or whatever, and you're not happy with the product, you will bring it back for your money, to get refunded. And it's like, because you're not satisfied with the product. I said, what doesn't give the right of that operational department to come back to learning developments and say, I want my money back? Because guess what? They're actually paying it out of their budget for the training that you're developing, and you're not talking to them. So stop whining about being order takers. If you're so-called learning experts, to Anthony's point, get out of your cubicle and go have a coffee lunch with the leaders of those departments that are asking for your help, and then pull out your expertise to do an assessment of what's going on in the department, and craft something that works for them. Right? This is what's the word for customization? Bespoke. Each department has their own needs, so you have to be bespoke about it, and not just take something out of the can, because at the end of the day, you're going to be blamed for something that you took. Well, here's a customer service training course. Let's slap it on and see if it works. No, because maybe you didn't address the customer service need. Maybe it wasn't an issue for training in the first place, but you didn't have the wherewithal to either literacy to find out exactly if that was a situation. And that's on you at the end of the day.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And Ajay hit on a very important point there is, even though, the guy next to me may be getting his paycheck from the exact same manager I am, at the end of the day, if I'm creating training for that person, I'm the vendor, he's my client. Mm-hmm. That's very much a client-vendor relationship.
Yep.
Same as if I'm creating something for someone, like when, if somebody sells that, I don't know, some eyeliner or something, okay, there's a clear customer, there's a clear vendor. This is no different.
No.
We just happen to be internal.
And I'm going to hold you there, because that's part 2. And we're out of time. We started a little bit late and we're going on a little long. We are out of time, but that's part 2, because I think we're going right into that good old rabbit hole, and it's going to be good. There's a lot of things wrong with what's going on in the industry right now in many ways, and not even the industry, because it's not necessarily an industry. So I really look forward to getting more into this.
By the way, Rick, there's something going wrong here too, because Nancy and I are agreeing with each other way too much.
I was going to say, yes, we'll disagree more next time.
Yep, I'm not doing my job. I'll do it better next time too.
Stir the pot, man. Come on.
Anyway, sorry. This is good. This is fun. I don't know if you guys are available next week or right after New Year's. We should do part 2.
Happy to do so, Rick. Happy to do so.
It'll be a lot of fun, because we're getting into the crux of the whole thing. We covered a lot of points, and sometimes I feel we can talk till we're blue in the face, and it doesn't make any difference. People just go, and then it's over.
Can I
this gets back to motivation.
Yes.
Can I provide a quick teaser for you, Rick?
Yeah.
Anthony and I had a conversation for maybe the next episode. Social learning.
What are you teasing?
Social learning, Anthony. Social learning. We had the discussion last night.
Oh, God.
We'll have to brief Rick on that and how.
With a social LMS. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. We got some strong opinions on this. So
it sounds good.
We want to tease that up a bit. So.
Yeah, that kind of falls right into all the stuff we're heading towards anyway.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. All right, guys. It was fun. It was very pleasant and very professional. Everybody was kind and nice to each other. It is Christmas after all, so we're being kind. Yeah.
We'll do better next time.
Yep. No. So we will see you folks next week or next month, whenever we start. We're going to be down for a couple weeks from Christmas to about the first week of January, and then we'll be back up. So have a good one, everyone. Enjoy your holidays, whatever they are, and Happy New Year. Or we'll see you next week when we're still going to have a show. So if you guys are available, let's make it happen. Sounds good.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, Rick.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.